G'day guys, Disney Dave coming at you once again from Down Under. I've got another DVD and Blu-ray collection edition for you guys today. Today we're going to talk about some of the more specialty titles that I have in my Disney collection. These are, of course, documentary films. Now we're mostly going to be talking about documentaries that have been made about Walt Disney or the Walt Disney Company, but there's also a couple of Disney nature documentaries in my collection as well, which we'll briefly talk about. So I think we'll talk about them first and get them out of the way, and then get to what we're all here to look at today. Now I only have two Disney nature titles in my collection, and they are African Cat and Chimpanzee. Absolutely love Chimpanzee. I don't think I've watched African Cats yet, but this is a really good documentary. There's actually a ton of Disney nature documentary. There's one about flamingos, there's one about butterflies, I think, there's one about bears, there's heaps of them. The only two I've picked up are the only two that actually made available in Australia. I don't know why they didn't make the other ones available here, but I picked these ones up and I haven't imported the other ones yet. Hopefully I will at some point, but then they haven't been high on my priorities list. I have a feeling the reason behind it is that in most cases these documentaries are made by independent filmmakers, and then those filmmakers sell the films to distributors. So in these cases Disney have bought the rights to distribute these films and have done narration for themselves. I think Chimpanzee was made by a team of French filmmakers, and there's probably a French release of this film with a French narration over the top. However, Disney released this with a narration by Tim Allen over the top. It's the same as those BBC Earth documentaries that are narrated by David Attenborough. Some of them are released in the US as Discovery Channel releases, and they replace the Attenborough narration with Oprah Winfrey or Sigourney Weaver or Alec Baldwin, and they're just really not the same. So I think in the case of these ones, it might be that in Australia the distributors of the other titles are different. But I will look into importing the other titles at some point because I really like these, and I'm sort of really getting into these nature documentaries at the moment. I've been watching a lot of the BBC David Attenborough ones of late, so I think the Disney nature ones will be the next step. Ghosts of the Abyss in 3D is also one that I have. This isn't a Disney nature one, but this is another case of Disney buying distribution rights for a film in the United States. I think this one went to the IMAX, and then Disney picked up distribution rights for home video, but this was only just recently released in Australia. It's been out in the US for years and years, but Disney aren't the distributor of this title in Australia. It was one of our independent labels like Madman or Umbrella. I can't remember exactly who brought it out, but yeah, this is really good. It's a 3D exploration of the wreck of the Titanic, led by none other than James Cameron. So it's a bit of a companion film to Titanic. This isn't really a Disney documentary, but I sort of classify it as a more specialty title. It's the WOW, World of Wonder. Discover, optimize and experience HD home theater. This is like an optimization disc for your home theater system, for your Blu-ray player, for your sound system. And it helps you calibrate your system in accordance to basically what Disney think are the best specifications, probably to watch their movies. But we set our home theater up using this disc, but we think we got a really good setup out of it, and we haven't had a problem with it yet, and we haven't had to go and buy any of the more expensive optimization discs that are on the market, like the Oppo disc. I really would recommend this. Okay, so let's get to what everyone is here for, and these are documentaries on the Walt Disney Company or Walt Disney himself. I think very soon I'm actually going to put together a top 5 or a top 10 video of my favorite Disney documentaries of all time. So I'm not going to go into great depth on these titles. I'm just going to show you, I'm going to talk a little bit about them, but I'm going to leave the real in-depth stuff for that video that I'll hopefully be producing very soon. First up, let's talk about Walt Disney, the man behind the myth. Now I have the edition that was released by the Walt Disney Family Museum. I bought this at the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco when I was over there for a holiday a few years ago. There is another edition of this which is long out of print, which was distributed by Walt Disney Home Entertainment, and it features all the same special features. It features the exact same movie. So even though that one is out of print and goes for crazy prices on eBay, you can pick this one at the Walt Disney Family Museum, either at their store or on their online website. They've also just released this on Blu-ray, so you can pick up the Blu-ray transfer of it as well. I've heard that the Blu-ray restoration on it is so-so. I think they've restored all the footage and they've re-edited the movie in high def, but supposedly a lot of the footage still isn't up to scratch, and it's not a great jump from the DVD. I did consider importing it, but I emailed the Walt Disney Family Museum and they wanted to charge me something like the equivalent of $75 Australian to import the Blu-ray. I thought it's really just not worth it. I have this one and I'm content with this one for now until I can maybe pick up the Blu-ray at a reasonable price. There's no way I'm paying $75 Australian to have that shipped. It's got some great special special features on it as well, which in their own right are great Disney documentaries. There's one called Walt, An Intimate View, Actors, Directors and Friends, The Making of Walt, Location Videos, and Home Movies. The home movies are absolutely fantastic. Look, this documentary is a bit wishy-washy. It's really whitewashed. It's your typical Walt Disney Studios portrait of Walt Disney, which is very whitewashed. There's some great information in here, but look, it doesn't give you a real great look at the man himself, really just at the figure that the Walt Disney Company would like you to see. On the other end of the spectrum though, we have the PBS documentary Walt Disney, He Made Believe, from American Experience. This is far from wishy-washy, whitewash. This is a warts and all look at Walt Disney, and I absolutely loved it. I know a lot of people hated this documentary because it painted Walt in a little bit of an unfavorable light in some sections, but that's what we want to see. Walt Disney was a man. He was just like all of us, and he made mistakes. He did questionable things, just like everyone does, and that's the thing that I really love about Walt Disney. This is the view that I love. This is the kind of portrait that I like to see about people, and that I like to see about Walt Disney. And if you want to see something that hasn't exactly been whitewashed by the Disney company or the Disney family, this is the Walt Disney biography to check out. This documentary is in 2 movie-length parts. There is actually an edition of it you can buy in Australia, which has been split into 4 parts, which is kind of interesting. I'd like to pick that up and kind of compare the two at some point, but it's quite expensive, and I'll just hold out on getting it at a good price, I think. Next up, we have Frank and Ollie. This is absolutely fantastic. A really beautiful look at Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson, and about their times at the Disney studio. They were, of course, 2 of the famous 9 old men. They are some of the greatest animators that ever worked at Disney, and they worked on some of the earliest movies. This is a homemade documentary that was made at the end of their lives, and it really shows just how much of a friendship these 2 guys had. They lived next door to each other. Look, it's a really great in-depth look at the behind the scenes of the early days of the Walt Disney Studios and the animation techniques of the animators of that time. Really recommended, and 70 minutes of bonus material on there, including making the movie, Frank and Ollie's personal home movies, and a few other little bits and pieces. So that's a really recommended pickup. Walt and El Grupo. Basically, Walt and the Group. This is a documentary about the time that Walt and the team of animators, El Grupo, the group, spent over in South America, and then subsequently went on to produce Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros. Look, it's a little bit of a specialty documentary in itself. It's not going to appeal to everyone, but it's a really interesting look at a period of time in the Walt Disney Company that isn't often covered. I found a really good documentary. It's really for the die-hard fans. The best thing about this release, though, is that this includes as a special feature the original 1943, uncut, unedited, uncensored, original theatrical release of Saludos Amigos. And of course, it has been censored by the Disney Company over time, but the uncut version is actually on this disc. It's the only place you can actually buy the uncut version of that movie. So that's worth the price of admission alone with this documentary, and of course in a really nice little slip cover there. The Boys is next up. This is a really great documentary on the Sherman Brothers, of course Dick and Bob. They wrote some of the most memorable music in the Disney canon, the music from The Jungle Book, the music from Mary Poppins, and a few other bits and pieces here and there. This is a great documentary. The 2 didn't get along with each other at all, and they didn't speak to each other at all at the later part of their life, and this is just a documentary on the tumultuous relationship between the 2, but they had the uttermost respect for each other, and they both could sit and write and work together incredibly well and write some of the most incredible music, some of the most memorable music ever written. It's a great documentary, definitely worth checking out if you're interested in that kind of thing. Again, slipcover for that release, really cool. Next up, we have Waking Sleeping Beauty. Absolutely beautiful documentary, not just Disney documentary, but documentary full stop. This is a story about the animators during the Renaissance period of Disney animation and how they strove to create some of the greatest animated movies, some of the greatest movies of all time under some of the worst circumstances. They were under the thumb by a group of men who didn't know how to run a movie business. These were completely unartistic people, and the animators were just under so much stress the whole time. But despite that, they did go on to make some of the greatest movies of all time. It's a great documentary. Again, it's a little bit wishy-washy, it's a little bit whitewashed. It sort of skips over some of the more tumultuous moments, some of the more controversial things. It doesn't like to paint certain people in as bad of a light as they should be painted in, but of course it's an official Disney disc, so they're not really going to go to that extent. But other than that, it's a really nice documentary. It's feel good. It doesn't need to go go that far. Absolutely recommend that. Waking Sleeping Beauty. It was produced by Don Hahn, who's a producer and animator from the Disney studio, who was one of the lead producers on Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. So definitely worth a pickup. Next up, I have two documentaries that I picked up from Disney parks on my trips there many years ago. They are the Imagineering the Magic discs, Disneyland Resort, and Magic Kingdom. These are really good looks. They're probably the most definitive looks at the creation of both Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom. This is probably the better of the two. Absolutely fantastic look at the creation of Disneyland. It goes for something like an hour and a half, but there's like heaps of special features on there as well, which are sort of like extra documentaries and give you a little bit of extra information on the park. This one I found a little bit disappointing. I was hoping that it was going to be a look at Walt Disney World as a whole, but it only focuses on the Magic Kingdom. So it doesn't cover any of the stuff on Walt Disney's plans of his Epcot City or any of the other parks. It just covers Magic Kingdom, and it's really not in as much depth as the Disneyland documentary. I think both of these might be out of print at the moment, but try and get your hands on them if you can, because if you're interested in Imagineering and you're interested in the creation of Disney parks, they're definitely worth checking out. Talking about the Disney parks, I picked this one up, I think, on my last trip to Disneyland, Disney Parks Where Dreams Come True. This is just a series of short television documentaries. There's 3 of them on there: Disneyland Resort Behind the Scenes, Ultimate Walt Disney World, and Undiscovered Disney Parks. Really, it's nothing more than a glorified tourism disc that shows you little bits and pieces of the parks to try and persuade you to go to the park. It's also a little bit of a memento of your stay at Disneyland. If you're feeling like you're missing Disneyland a little bit, pop it on and you get a few nice little memories on there. This comes with a Blu-ray, a DVD, and a digital copy, strangely. But these are TV documentaries. I've actually seen them played on TV before. There are a few of the documentaries as well produced by the same team, I think, but they didn't make it onto this set for some reason. There's 9 extra special features on there as well, which kind of take you more in depth into the parks too. But yeah, you can pick that one up at Disney Parks. As far as I'm aware, that's not out of print just yet. And at that covers my Disney documentary collection. Thank you for watching. Of course, if you haven't yet, I have done a whole series of videos on my Disney collection. There's one for animated titles, one for live action titles, Marvel, Star Wars, and there's a couple of update videos as well. Every time I'm getting, a handful of new Disney discs, I'll be doing an update. So if you haven't checked out any of those videos, please do. But if you're feeling extra generous and you want to give me just that little extra bit of support, please, after the jump, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more videos from me. To all my regular viewers, thank you for joining me once again. And to absolutely everybody, I hope I see you again in the future. Until then though, guys, take care, and I hope you have a magical day.